Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse, and more specifically from beautiful Danville, Illinois, the homeland of the Corellian tradition. And welcome to Midday with Reverend Don. And today is July 3rd, year 23 Aquarius, and here we are. You may have missed me on Friday. We had a terrible storm this weekend and we're without power for a while, so I was not able to be here on Friday, but I'm happy to be back today. And hello to Bradley in the chat room, and hello to Ravenwolf in the chat room, and hello to Mary in the chat room. And as you know, if you follow Midday with Reverend Don, whatever platform you may be watching on, if you type your comments on that platform, they will show up in my chat room and we can talk directly. And it's good to see everyone. Mary says, missed you horribly. Oh, thank you, Mary. I'm glad to be back. And boy, a power outage will tell you how dependent we have become on modern technology. And Bradley remarks that it's a full moon. And yes, it is. And I had an interesting experience that I will share with you before I get on to other interesting experiences. But this particular full moon in India is called Guru Purnima, and it is for honoring spiritual teachers. And so I had a student from India contact me last night to thank me for having been their spiritual teacher, and we had a lovely conversation. And hello to Janet in the chat room. Good to see you, Janet. Hello, Renee in the chat room. It's good to see you, Renee. So the other thing that was very interesting, Friday, or actually Saturday, was the 20th anniversary of the city council meeting in Hoopeston many, many years ago. And many of you probably won't remember anything about this, but 20 years ago, we decided to move the Witch School headquarters from Chicago to Central Illinois. And we found a building, and we had to look for an affordable building. We were young, and we were in need of an affordable building, and we happened to find one in the small town of Hoopeston, which is just north of Danville, north of Rossville. And we figured, we're bringing business to a town that is lacking business. We figured we didn't really expect there'd be any major problems. We'd been in Chicago so long, we forgot that not everywhere is cosmopolitan. And we found quite a backlash from the radical Christian community. And we came down on that date to attend the city council meeting and to answer people's questions, and to try to tell them, this is not what some of you are afraid of. And Mary says, that was a crazy article. I can't believe you were treated that way. Well, yes, we were. And that's only one of many articles. It was a heck of a night. It was an extraordinarily instructional night about a lot of things, including the state of prejudice in the world, how far people can depart from logic. It was instructional on many things. The crowd that night was overflowing and extraordinarily emotional and very close to violence. The people who objected to our coming made points that had nothing to do with us or anyone like us, but they were sure that they did. And anyone, well, if a couple of years ago, I testified before the Jacksonville, well, not testified, but spoke before the Jacksonville City Council on the subject of their human rights ordinance and extending it to cover the LGBTQ community. And you saw the same thing there. People who had these bizarre ideas of what that meant, that had no reflection of reality. That's what happened this night as well. Now, Mary asks, are some of those people still there now? Yes, I'm sure some of them are. Some of them aren't because they never were. Um, but we'll come back to that. So this night went forward. Probably the most sobering moment for me um, was one of the various people. And if you've ever heard the phrase "the peasants storming the castle with pitchforks," this is kind of how they felt. But this person was ranting about how we practice black magic and put spells on people. We tried to point out that's not what we teach. It's not our philosophy. It's not what we do. And he would not listen, insisted, no, I know it's what you do because I've seen it online. And in that moment, it did dawn on me, groups other than ours were saying things like that online. And that was a moment for me, because I have always been very much of the good karma persuasion. I've always been very big on not putting spells, quote, on people, but using them for self-improvement, for making your own life better. But that darker element of our community was growing in popularity at that time. It has grown much more since. And we found ourselves painted with that same brush and could not shake their impression that that was us, and that we could not seem to explain to them that our community, like their community, has many branches. Because there are certainly lots of Christians who would not have approved of their behavior that night, including people who were there that night. But none of them spoke. There were threats made. It was frightening when all is said and done. And there was a particular individual who well, it was an over the top night, and at the end of the evening, as we were leaving, and at that moment we said, all right, we won't come, and we meant that at the time, and would have stuck there, but we'll come back to that. But the sheriff said, we needed to leave, we needed to get out of town quickly, and he would escort us to our cars. Because he believed that the event was on the edge of violence. Now, I want to emphasize that the Sheriff Drollinger, was a very good man, although at that time we didn't know him from anyone. But we found out later he was a good man trying his best to keep the peace in the situation. But he believed it was going to boil over into violence. And we were literally escorted out of town. And we came back to Danville, where we stayed the night. And that would probably have been the end of it. Except we found out later that this did not actually represent everyone in that community. That some of these people had actually been bussed in from other communities, and that they were so on the edge of violence that many of the local people who were present and wanted to say, that they did not object to our coming, were afraid to speak themselves. And this is a very important point. But they contacted us afterwards to tell us this. And we were brought in for another event that showed a very different face of the community. However, the opposition was present and it was entrenched, and eventually we did leave. And it was very evident that night. I would have to say that to some extent, after the fact, that what we really saw was a minority, but a minority in control. They managed to block us from doing many of the things that would have made it possible for us to stay in the long term, even though I don't believe they represented the majority of that community. I remember many very nice people in that community. particularly Diana Midnight, who had been a performer in Las Vegas in their younger years. J of J's Cafe. There were a lot of people who were very nice, welcoming people, and a lot of people who just hated the idea of any non-Christians being there. But, and this is important, the radical ones, the radicalized Christians, were the ones who were willing to take it to the edge of violence and would have gone over that edge, I believe. And therefore, they intimidated everyone else into silence. And I think that we see this a lot now on the national stage of politics, because then they were doing this on the local stage with success. I don't think they've been entirely successful on that national stage, but I think we see a certain amount of attempt at that, even now going forward. And that makes it all the more important that we stand up for what we believe in, even when radicalized elements try to intimidate or frighten us. Because if we do not stand, no one else will. And that night, we were the only ones who stood for ourselves. There were other people in that audience who said they would have liked to, but they didn't. At least not in any substantial way. That's not to take away from the good people in that community who did reach out to us later, but it does speak to the phenomenon of that night. And I think we see that night being played out across the country in many ways today. And as a minority religion, I think we need to be very conscious of this and very mindful of where we are going. And it is important, I guess I would say, for us to stand up for ourselves, but for us to have faith in the things we believe. And, I've talked a little bit about how I feel about how certain things have played out. And, this is a timely reminder to me to stand on my own truth and to stand up for myself, which I have been doing and certainly will continue to. But that in the end, we must be the bulwark of our own safety, the bulwark of our own well-being. We can't necessarily expect anyone else will. And it's wonderful when others do. But we must not forget to do our own part and to speak our own truth. And sometimes, even when it's dangerous, we still have to do it. I've spoken before about the book The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom of the Netherlands. And what a wonderful book this is. But the relevance to this conversation is that Corrie and her sister, who were prosperous, well-established people who could have simply ignored the bad things that were happening during the Nazi invasion of their country, chose not to ignore it, stood up for what they believed in, lost everything they had, one of them died, but the surviving sister never regretted her actions because she felt they were the right thing to do, and that had they not done it, they would have regretted it forever. And sometimes even when standing up for what you believe in costs you everything, it doesn't cost you as much as you would have lost if you hadn't done it in years of regret. And so as we look at things playing out in the world, because it's not just here where radical elements are becoming very aggressive. They're very aggressive all around the world, and some places have been for quite some time. If we don't stand up, we have no reason to think anyone will. But if we do, those other people who are afraid to stand up might take courage and come forward. So that night in Hoopeston, we stood up for ourselves, and those other people in the audience were not so encouraged that they could come forward that night. But within days, they did. And I think we have to be mindful of the fact that when we stand up for what is right, we send a message to those who may be afraid to do so. And that can help them to find the courage to do the same. And Ravenwolf in the chat room. And hello to Sir Rolando in the chat room. It's good to see you, Sir Rolando, joining us from the Philippines. Hello to Mary Hawk. And Ravenwolf says, it's strange how the Christian world refuses to address their own elephant in the room, that being the decline of their membership in the UK and much of the US, but continue to try to persecute us. Hello to Diane in the chat room. Good to see you, Diane. And I think actually there's a direct cause and effect, because they're using their people's fear of the other to try to drive memberships. It is a political technique more than an irrational fear among their leadership. Now, it's a rational fear among their membership, but I think the leadership know exactly what they're doing. So speaking about myself, you know, I try to think about the things I do. And I've talked about the fact that there's some things I may have to say down the line. I'm waiting for the right moment. And I'm not, for all that I'm looking for that balance between I and we, I do have a responsibility to think as we in some situations. So I am. But I intend to speak my truth and live my truth. And you'll be here for it. So I hope that you enjoy it. It may end up a show. We'll see. You'll notice I'm wearing the Rap Star Pentacle today. And I thought it was appropriate for talking about the Hoopeston anniversary because it's as in your face as you can get. I remember when I bought this, my first thought was, what on earth can I ever use this for? And then I thought, you know, with a plain black robe at a public event, it would be very striking. The thought that I would actually wear it with a certain jacket was not in my head that day. But for this, I think it's appropriate because it says my truth in this instance, that I am pagan, I am Corellian, I am Wiccan, all depending, I suppose, on your definitions, particularly some of those words, but within my definitions, I am these things, and that is my truth, and no matter the size of the crowd that objects, it's still my truth. And Bradley in the chat room says bling bling, and yes, it is. It's the blingiest, not only the blingiest pentagram that I own, it's, I think, the blingiest pentagram I've ever seen for wearing. And hello to Anna in the chat room. Anna says, hello, you are correct in your reading. I had done a reading for Anna recently. And she says, you were correct in your reading that mentioned my heart health. I had raised cholesterol for the first time in a test not long after that reading. And this obviously had come up in the reading totally unexpectedly. So thank you, Anna, for that testimonial. And you know, this is one of the things about readings. They will hit things you do not anticipate, things you don't know necessarily. And if you'd like to have a reading with me, you can instant message me, or you can instant message me on Messenger at Facebook, you can instant message me at Instagram, or you can send me an email at donlewishp@aol.com, and we can set up a reading. I am doing readings again, and I look forward to doing more. I also have a couple of other things to talk about today. And hello to Lilith, who, quote, just fumbled in, end quote, and asked, what is the topic? We were talking about the 20th anniversary of the Hoopeston move and how we have to stand up for our truth, even when it's a frightening situation, even when it's a risky situation. Doesn't mean that you don't think about the right time to stand up for your truth, but you stand up for your truth, and that's why I'm wearing the giant pentagram today. And then we were talking about readings. Anna was telling me about how the reading I recently did for her had unexpectedly hit an important topic. Um, and now I'm going to talk a bit about some things I'm doing. I'm going to be offering a night with the Corellian ancestors um, in the near future. And that will be coming, um, let me just call up the date and make sure I have it correct. Um, it will be not this Saturday, but the following Saturday, which will be July 15th at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. And what we're going to do is we're going to have an evening of stories about the ancestors and channeling with the ancestors. And this will be part of my Patreon offerings, but there will also be tickets available for people who would like to come. And some people I'm simply inviting because I would like to have them there. And hello to Danny in the chat room. And so watch for more about that. I'm also going to be announcing my July seminar presently, which is going to be on the subject of oracular messages, how to do them, how to take them. And I see Janet in the chat room asked why the word live is flashing. And you know, the different platforms do different things, but the reason it's flashing is that I am in fact live. We're not pre-recorded, we're going out live to everyone who's watching, although later you may rewatch it in a pre-recorded format, because it will still be here. But if you're watching right now, it's live. And I guess they want you to know. I'm curious though, because I know Janet is usually here most days, and I don't know why it's flashing for her today and not another day. But that's why it would be flashing. And the last big announcement today is that we have a new book available for pre-order. If you watch my Facebook page, the link will be up soon. And it's called Travel Magic by Lisa McSherry. And if the name Lisa McSherry sounds familiar, there's a reason, and that's because she wrote the famous book, Virtual Pagan, and also Virtual Pagan 2.0. She's also the author of Magical Connections and A Witch's Guide to Crafting Your Practice, Create a Magical Path That Works for You. And now her newest book, coming to you from Pagan World Publishing, is Travel Magic. And watch for that link later today. And you can find that book at CorellianPublishing.com. And it will be in a paperback format. It's a wonderful book, and I'm sure you will enjoy it. And let me just reference quickly the price. To make sure I'm saying the right thing, because you know, you want to make sure you're saying the right thing. So the price will regularly be $19.99, but currently it's $14.99. So if you want to pre-order, you can get that special price. And you can find it already up at CorellianPublishing.com. And again, there will be links going out later today. And Lilith asked where I got this pentacle. And I suppose that's a story in itself. I believe this came from Fantasy Headquarters. I think it was Fantasy Headquarters. Fantasy Headquarters is one of the best costume shops in the United States. It's located in Chicago. It's very famous there. It's famous, I imagine, in costuming circles everywhere. And I believe I got this there. It is possible I might have gotten it somewhere else because I enjoy costume shops. But I'm going to assume I got it there. And if you are looking for costumes, they are the place to go. And she asks, isn't it heavy? And a lot of the jewelry I wear is heavy. I enjoy heavy jewelry. So yes, it probably is, but not all of that heavy. It's not really heavy. And it was meant for costume use. The same, but it was meant for costume use and capitalizing on a pagan community, which at that time, because this is like 30 years old, couldn't necessarily find jewelry as easily as they could later. Um, and Danny in the chat room, hello Danny, says, I'm about to order all the degree books along with the ritual book they're sold with. I can't wait to get the new ones. Thank you, Danny. By all means, and include a note for how you'd like me to sign them if you want me to sign them, and I'll be happy to do so. And you can find those all at CorellianPublishing.com. And when I got this, I also got a silver ankh. And Danny says, oh, I would love that. And I'm always happy to autograph, so just let me know how you'd like it made out. If you want it made out to Danny or to another name, just let me know. I always ask because unless I've already signed books for you, I'm not certain. But because some people want the name that they're ordering under, and some people have another name they may be known by, and some people mean the book to be a gift, so they don't necessarily want it made out to a particular name. So there are a number of considerations, but just let me know, and I'll be happy to sign. I also got a silver ankh, basically a chrome finished ankh, and I attached that to a chrome finished pocket watch that I had at that time, still have them. And I wore that for a long time with using the ankh basically as the watch fob. And that was very cool. It created a very interesting effect. I still have that. But living in Florida for so long, I stopped wearing vests for the most part, and therefore stopped wearing the pocket watches. We'll see what happens now. By the time winter comes, I may be quite happy to start wearing this again. We'll find out. Obviously, I'm a man who enjoys jewelry, from a family that enjoys jewelry. The fact that my mother left 400 pieces of jewelry that you all saw kind of speaks to the fact that this is not something that started with me. And if you could see my office, you'd see all the jewelry on my desk that I wear for these broadcasts. And I just look at it as a creative expression. And I think my favorite piece recently has been this collar that I've been wearing, which also I've often worn as a coronet. And it allows different centerpieces to be placed. And I've been really enjoying that. Because it gives me many different looks, but also is so easy to handle. And it looks good in an ostentatious way, which is what I normally am aiming for. But I've always regarded appearance as an artistic expression. And I'm sure that I always will. With that, I see that we're coming to the end of our half hour. And once again, I want to remark that it was very interesting to observe this 20th anniversary. At the time, we were quite taken by the fact that this act of extreme prejudice happened to coincide with the celebration of independence and freedom, which in this country is July 4th, and showed that the people who were doing this had no understanding of those concepts except for themselves, which I think is an unfortunate mindset for many people. And it was very interesting that we celebrated that 20th anniversary in the middle of a power outage, which really forced us to reflect on these matters. But thank you for joining me today. Thank you for sharing this time with me and these reminiscences. I love you all. I love the fact that we get to spend this time together, and especially that we get to actually talk. And Mary says, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Thank you, Mary. But it's the future that matters. And we did stand our ground and did move our our headquarters in Hoopeston. Um, and all these years later, who's standing now? We're still here. We're going forward. And despite things which you might have thought would destroy us, we're still here. We're still standing, and we're still moving forward. So, I'm reminded of the Addams Family motto: "We gladly devour all those who would destroy us." And although that's maybe a little strident, I have to tell you, nobody ever made any money betting on us going away. So we're here for the long haul. I'm here for the long haul. Psychic Academy is going to be here for decades to come. And I'm so glad you're with me. And it's going to be a wonderful ride. Thank you all, and let us close with our prayer. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we ask you to help us to remain flexible and open in our mindset. Help us not to become radicalized, but to realize that there are many points of view, and to welcome all those who are of goodwill. Help us to learn from the object lesson of bigotry that we ourselves may not be bigoted, that we may stand against narrowness and prejudice in this world, and that we may speak our own truth and stand true to our own beliefs. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for this, for all that you do in our lives, and we pray that we shall go forward hand in hand for many years to come, and knowing you are always with us, but from respect, we thank you for your presence, and may you be blessed now and always. And I thank you for your presence. I love you all. I love spending this time with you, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. I realize you might not be here tomorrow because it is the 4th of July holiday, but I will be here, and I will see you then. And until then, may you blessed be.